Hi. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 65, and yesterday, my daughter-in-law fired me in front of the entire executive team. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "We don't need outdated voices in leadership anymore." Just like that. In front of 20-something people, some of whom I hired. Some I mentored through their first presentations, their first real screw-ups, their first wins. And she dismissed me like a broken printer. Like I hadn't given 37 years of my life to this company. The worst part? She said it with a smile. That perfect, rehearsed smile she wears like perfume. The conference room went quiet. That unbearable kind of quiet, where even the AC sounds too loud. Someone shifted in their chair. I think it was Logan from legal. Or maybe Justine, the new HR girl. I couldn't really look at anyone. I just stared at the flicker of the smartboard in the corner, still glowing with the title slide of what was supposed to be our quarterly strategy meeting. I knew something was off when she called for this meeting a day early. Vanessa never improvises. She scripts everything, down to the water bottles on the table. But I came anyway. In my navy blazer. The one with the tiny pin my husband gave me after our first contract with Edenwood Hotels. He's been gone 12 years now. I wore it for strength. I sat at the far end of the table, like always. The head chair. I thought it still belonged to me, even after Vanessa became CEO last year. I didn't think she'd push that hard. Not like this. She did it all so calmly. "Evelyn, your contributions have been appreciated," she said, in that PR-trained tone of hers. "But it's time for new perspectives to take this company into the future." No mention of my name on the company's original LLC paperwork. No mention of the years I kept this place afloat through recessions and personal grief. Just that phrase. New perspectives. I wonder if you've ever had that kind of moment. When everything goes quiet around you, not because of peace, but because your body knows something your heart isn't ready to hear. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for my notebook, the one I always bring to meetings, even when no one else does. Brown leather, worn at the edges. I closed it, placed the pen gently on top. I said, "Well then, I guess that's that." Vanessa's brows lifted just slightly. I could tell she expected drama. Maybe some trembling. An argument. Something that would make her look like the reasonable one. But there was nothing left to say. I stood slowly. My knee cracked a little, I really should stretch more, but I stayed steady. I walked around the table, nodding to the people I once called colleagues, friends, family even. Some avoided my gaze. Some looked like they were holding back tears. Lily, the young accountant, actually whispered, "I'm sorry," as I passed. I squeezed her hand. Didn't say a word. At the doorway, someone called out, "Evelyn, this isn't right." It was Nate from Creative. He always had a soft spot for me. I turned, gave him a quiet smile. "Thank you, Nate. That means more than you know." Then I looked at Vanessa. And I swear, for the briefest second, I saw something crack behind her perfect exterior. A flicker of, what? Guilt? Fear? Whatever it was, it passed quickly. But I saw it. And I'll remember that. I walked down the hallway to my office for the last time. Past the gallery wall I curated myself. Past the espresso machine they all laughed at me for insisting on. Past the print of the Seattle skyline Jason gave me on my 50th birthday. My son. He wasn't there. He didn't know. And that's when the real pain hit. Not the job. Not the title. But the silence from the one person who should have been there. I packed in silence. I didn't rush. I took the lavender-scented hand cream from my drawer. The chipped mug Jason made me in a pottery class when he was 8. The team photo from last Christmas, before the tension started creeping into every smile. When I left, Vanessa was by the elevator, arms crossed, mouth twisted in something that wanted to be a smirk. I assume you've got everything, she said, not really asking. I held my box, looked her straight in the eye, and I smiled. A calm, real smile. Not angry. Not bitter. Good luck, Vanessa, I said. You're going to need it. I saw it again. That flicker. The one she didn't want anyone to notice. You know the look someone gives when they realize they underestimated you? It was right there. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't over. Not even close. What would you have done in my place? Walked away quietly? Or stayed to fight for the truth? I chose the second. But not in the way she expected. Keep listening. Because what came next changed everything. I remember the day Jason first told me about her. It was a Wednesday, early spring. The kind of day in Portland when the cherry blossoms start falling in pink flurries across the sidewalks, and you catch yourself believing in fresh starts again. I was in the kitchen, making lentil soup. My hands were still damp from rinsing parsley when the phone rang. Mom, I met someone, Jason said, voice bright, a little breathless. I leaned against the counter, paper towel in one hand. Yeah? Someone serious? He laughed softly, the way he used to in high school when he had something big to tell me. I think so. Her name's Vanessa. I'd like you to meet her. Could you make your roasted chicken? The lemon thyme one? There was a pause. That kind of pause where something big is about to shift. Sunday dinner okay? Of course I said yes. What mother wouldn't? That weekend I cleaned like we were expecting royalty. I pulled the good dishes from the cabinet, the white ones with the blue rim. I ironed napkins, lit a candle that smelled like bergamot and rain, and placed fresh tulips in the vase Jason gave me last Christmas. When they arrived, I was pulling the chicken from the oven. The smell filled the house, rosemary, garlic, lemon. Jason called out from the entryway. Mom, we're here. I turned, and there she was. Vanessa Cross. The woman who, eventually, would turn my whole life inside out. She was striking. Tall, slim, with dark brown hair parted in the center and tucked behind her ears. She wore a navy sheath dress with a pale beige trench coat over it, the kind of look you see in lifestyle magazines. Her makeup was perfect. Not too much, but done with intention. Everything about her felt calculated. But her smile was warm. Too warm. Mrs. Brooks, I've heard so much about you, she said, offering her hand. Her nails were done in a soft nude, not a chip in sight. Jason talks about you constantly. I smiled back, shook her hand. Please. Call me Evelyn. And I've heard nothing about you, which means my son's either very private or very forgetful. Jason laughed, but it sounded rehearsed. We met at a conference in Vancouver, he explained. She was speaking on brand psychology. She was brilliant, he added, and I saw the way he looked at her. Like she hung the moon. Dinner went smoothly. Too smoothly, maybe. Vanessa complimented everything. The food. The house. The stories I told. She asked about the photos on the hallway wall, the antique cuckoo clock Jason had loved as a child, even the ceramic bowl with the crack down the side. She offered to help with dishes. I noticed she didn't actually touch the sponge, just hovered nearby, chatting. You raised a good man, she said softly while we stood by the sink. It must have been hard on your own. There it was. That edge. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like I'd done a decent job, all things considered. Like I'd played my part and now it was time to exit. I smiled, but my chest tightened. He's always been easy to love. She nodded and dried a spoon. When they left, I stayed at the sink long after the water turned cold. Her lipstick had left a perfect crescent on the wine glass. I stared at it for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and called my sister, Marianne. She's too perfect, I said. Something feels off. Marianne replied, you always think that. Remember when Jason dated Kelsey? You were convinced she was a social climber because she wore heels to a barbecue. Maybe she was right. I am overprotective. Always have been. Jason is my only child. After Peter died, it was just the two of us. We built our life like a team. We fought sometimes, sure. But we were a unit. Strong. Honest. Maybe too close. But I'd never tried to control him. I wanted him to be happy. I just didn't want that happiness to come at the cost of something essential. In the months that followed, Vanessa became a fixture. She had this way of taking up space without looking like she was. Suggesting restaurants, correcting Jason's anecdotes, helping him shop for suits that made him look like a hedge fund manager. He started missing our lunches. At first, it was just reschedules. Then cancellations. The first time I saw him in one of those slim-fit blazers, I said, "That's new." "Vanessa picked it," he said. "She says I need to look like a leader." I laughed, trying to keep it light. "You already are one." He didn't respond. And that was when I first felt it. The pull. Like I was being nudged out of the picture frame. 1 inch at a time. You ever feel like someone's gently erasing you? Not with a scream or a fight, but with silence? With style? By the time they announced their engagement, I already knew. She wasn't just marrying my son. She was moving into our world with a blueprint I hadn't seen. They chose a small wedding. Immediate family. At a vineyard outside Sonoma. Nothing too fancy, Jason said. But I Googled the place. The cheapest package cost more than my first year's salary. Vanessa asked my opinion on flowers. I suggested dahlias. She smiled and said, "Oh, Evelyn, that's sweet, but we're going for something more elevated. White orchids, maybe." Like that. Like I was quaint. I nodded. But that night, I sat in the hotel alone and stared out the window, phone to my ear, whispering to Marianne, "I think I'm losing him." And Marianne said, "That's just what happens. It doesn't mean he loves you less." But it felt like less. It felt like a goodbye disguised as progress. You ever lose someone, not to death, but to change? That's the kind of grief no one sends flowers for. And back then, I didn't know it yet. But the dinner that started with roasted lemon chicken? That was the beginning of the end. And the lipstick mark she left on my wine glass? I never washed it off. Not because I liked her. But because something in me knew I'd need the reminder. Looking back, I think the shift started with his shoes. Jason had always worn those worn-in brown sneakers. The kind with the soles practically molded to his feet. Comfortable, familiar. They matched his old khaki pants and the faded green hoodie he'd worn since grad school. Then, one day, he showed up to brunch in a charcoal suit and oxblood leather loafers. No tie. Pocket square folded just so. Hair slicked back like he belonged on the cover of some finance magazine. I remember blinking at him across the table. We were at that little cafe on 17th, the one with the mismatched mugs and string lights that stayed up year-round. "You look sharp," I said. He smiled, shrugged. "Vanessa thinks I need to project more authority. Can't look like I just rolled out of a coding lab." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something about the way he said it, it sounded like quoting someone else. Like repeating lines from a script you didn't write. That was the first time I felt it. The distance. Small at first. Like the flicker in a light bulb that hasn't burned out yet but isn't quite right either. Vanessa was everywhere after that. He stopped keeping snacks in his apartment. "We're eating clean now," he told me. The living room? Completely redone. Where there used to be board games stacked under the coffee table and Jason's guitar in the corner, now there were sleek minimalist bookshelves, an abstract sculpture, and a candle that smelled like sandalwood and ambition. Even the fridge changed. No more takeout containers. Just meal prepped glass boxes labeled Monday through Friday. Chia pudding. Grilled asparagus. Some green juice that looked like blended moss. She's helped me streamline things, Jason said, giving me a tour like it was a showroom. Feels good to live intentionally. I nodded, but inside, something sank. You ever walk into your child's home and realize nothing of them remains? It's like visiting a version of them built by someone else. They started skipping our Sunday lunches. At first, it was work. Then a trip to Santa Barbara. Then her family was visiting. Then it was, Vanessa's trying this new digital detox thing. No screens, no outside plans on weekends. He said it like a good student repeating the rules. I understood the concept. Boundaries. Couple time. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was slowly being written out of my own son's life. Scene by scene. Line by line. Once, I tried to push back gently. I suggested maybe he come by alone for dinner, just the two of us. Watch Jeopardy like we used to. Eat that awful frozen lasagna he liked when he was younger. Jason smiled, but his eyes slid away. Vanessa's got this new workshop series she wants me to attend with her. It's on emotional alignment. I didn't know what that meant. I still don't. But I remember how quiet my house felt that night. Not empty. Just hollow. Like a memory you can't fully touch. The wedding came 18 months after that first dinner. It was quick. Tidy. We're keeping it small, Jason said. Just us and immediate family. Vanessa doesn't want anything overproduced. They picked a vineyard outside Sonoma. Gorgeous, if you like curated charm. Rows of olive trees. White folding chairs. A string quartet. The kind of place that makes you feel like you should speak in soft voices and wear linen. I brought up music. Suggested a Nina Simone track Jason had always loved. He used to play it in the car, humming along to the piano. Vanessa smiled. That same tight-lipped smile she always used when she was about to disagree without sounding rude. Oh, Evelyn, that's sweet. But we're going for a cleaner sound. Something more modern. Maybe acoustic covers. Cleaner. Like my memories were messy. She asked me about centerpieces. I mentioned peonies. She picked calla lilies. She let me help. That's the part that stings. She made me feel included while quietly erasing every trace of me. You know, I used to think manipulation looked like yelling or cruelty. But it doesn't always. Sometimes, it's wrapped in compliments and choices that sound reasonable. Justifiable. It's saying, we just want this to feel fresh, when what you really mean is, we don't want any of you in it. The night before the wedding, I stayed alone in my room. It was a suite, far too large for one person. The windows looked out at rows of vines stretching into dusk. There was a note from the concierge and a small box of imported chocolates on the pillow. I sat on the edge of the bed, picked up my phone, and called Marianne. I feel like I'm losing him, I whispered. And the worst part is, I can't even say it out loud without sounding bitter. She was quiet for a second. Ev, he's not lost. He's just, in love. That changes things. But should it erase things? I asked. Is that what love does now? The next morning, they got married. Jason looked beautiful. Nervous, excited. His hands trembled as he held the ring. When he hugged me after the ceremony, I could still smell the cologne I gave him on his 30th birthday. But underneath it, there was her scent too. Vanessa wore white satin. The dress was sleek. No lace, no frills. She looked stunning. But when she smiled at me during photos, her eyes didn't smile. They were already somewhere else. They left for their honeymoon in Florence later that evening. As they pulled away in that black rental car, I saw her hand resting on his arm, her nails painted that same soft nude. He waved through the window. I smiled and waved back. But inside, I felt something crack. Not break. Not yet. But shift. You ever watch someone drive away and know they're not coming back the same? That was the moment I realized I hadn't been overreacting. I'd been right all along. And I also knew, deep down, that by the time the truth came out, it would already be too late to undo what she'd started. It was almost 5 when I got home that day. The sun had started to sink behind the neighbor's sycamore. A pale gold light slid across my driveway, touching the cracks I kept meaning to patch. I parked the car, left the box of my things in the back seat. I didn't want to carry it in just yet. Not while that strange calm still hung over me. I made tea. Chamomile, with a splash of honey. I wasn't hungry. Just needed something warm to hold. The house was too quiet. No buzzing emails. No Slack notifications. No phone ringing from the second line. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old floorboards. It felt like everything had stopped moving. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the mug between my hands. My palms were still dry from the office air. I hadn't even cried. Not yet. That's when the message came in. Lily. Sweet Lily. Always too soft for corporate. Her name lit up on my screen, and for a moment, I expected something simple. Maybe a thinking of you or miss you already. But it wasn't that. Her text was short. Frantic. The kind that makes your stomach turn before your brain even catches up. Evelyn, I'm so sorry. After you left, Vanessa held a meeting. She told everyone you were let go for embezzlement. She made us all sign NDAs. We know it's not true. I just thought you should know. I reread it. Twice. Then again. Embezzlement. The word felt foreign. Like it belonged in a courtroom drama, not in a text on my phone. Not with my name attached to it. My hand trembled. The mug slipped and hit the table. Tea spilled across the surface, curling around the base of the candle I hadn't lit in weeks. I grabbed a dish towel, tried to mop it up, but my hands weren't steady anymore. Vanessa hadn't just fired me. She was framing me. That's what it was. That's why she kept her voice so measured. Why she smiled when I walked out without a fight. She needed me silent. Erased. Because something deeper was going on. I stood slowly and walked to the office. My home office. The small sunroom I'd converted years ago when working from home was still a novelty. I booted up my laptop, half expecting a login block. But no. I was still in the system. That told me something. Either she was careless, or she didn't think I'd check. Or maybe she just assumed I was too crushed to act. She didn't know me very well, did she? I opened the company financials. My fingers moved out of habit, familiar with every password, every path. I had trained 3 of our CFOs. There wasn't a corner of our books I didn't know. The first few pages looked clean. Almost too clean. But then I found it. A side account labeled Operations Reserve 6. That wasn't a name we used. Ever. I clicked in. At first, just small amounts. A few hundred here. 1,000 there. Labeled as vendor retention or consulting fee. But over time, the numbers grew. 10,000. 25. 50. The most recent transfer had gone out that very morning. $50,000. It wasn't the number that made my breath hitch. It was the signature below it. 2 of them. Vanessa Cross. And Jason Brooks. Jason. My son. I leaned back, heart pounding. I blinked hard, tried to steady myself. Was he involved? Or, my throat tightened, was she forging his name too? I pulled up another transfer. Then another. Each time, the same pattern. Her signature. And his. Except, it didn't look like his signature. Not exactly. It looked like someone trying to imitate it. Someone who'd seen it often enough to get close. I printed the records. Page after page. 23 transfers. Over $200,000. Signed off by my son. Or someone pretending to be him. I sat there for a long time, staring at the papers scattered across the table. The printer whirred softly behind me. Outside, a dog barked. A neighbor's kid laughed. Normal life sounds. Nothing about this felt normal. My son. The boy who'd watched Star Trek marathons with me when he was 9. Who once cried because he thought he heard a frog by accident. The man who brought me roses on every birthday, even when he lived across the country. Either he was lying to me. Or someone was using his name. Neither answer brought comfort. I stood up and walked to the front window. The streetlights had come on. The sky was bruised blue. And then I saw it. Headlights. A familiar car pulling into my driveway. Jason's BMW. He parked, slammed the door, and walked toward the house with the kind of anger you can't fake. His tie was loose. His jaw tight. His phone clenched in his hand. He didn't knock. He used his key. When the door opened, I saw his face. Pale. Scared. Furious. "Mom," he said. "What the hell happened today?" And just like that, the calm cracked. Because I realized something. Vanessa hadn't just come after me. She'd come after both of us. And whatever came next, would tear something wide open. Jason stood in the kitchen like a man dropped into the wrong reality. His hands were clenched at his sides. His hair, usually neat, looked like he'd run his fingers through it too many times. His tie hung askew. He wasn't just angry. He was disoriented. "She said you quit," he said. "But half the office is texting me, saying you were fired. And then there's this," he held up his phone. "Vanessa says you were caught embezzling. What the hell is going on?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled the kettle off the burner. Poured hot water into the mug I hadn't touched since the tea spill. My hands were steady again. Not because I was calm. Because I was past shock. Past hurt. "Sit down, Jason," I said. He didn't. "I said," he repeated, louder, "what is going on?" I met his eyes. I didn't flinch. "You want the truth?" He nodded. So I told him. From the beginning. About the meeting. Vanessa's tone. The calculated smile. The way everyone stayed silent while she stripped me of my career. About the NDA she forced them to sign after I left. About Lily's message. About how I logged in from home and found the transfers. The forged signatures. I didn't sugarcoat anything. He listened. Quiet at first. Then pacing. Then rubbing his temples like it physically hurt to hear. When I was done, I walked over to the dining table and handed him the stack of printed records. He flipped through them like he was reading a report for work. Calm. Focused. Until he reached the signature pages. He froze. "This isn't my handwriting," he said. His voice was low. Almost inaudible. I waited. He looked up, and for a second, I saw the boy he used to be. Confused. Raw. Looking for someone to tell him what to believe. "I didn't sign these." I nodded. "I didn't think you did." He sank into the nearest chair. Elbows on the table. Head in his hands. "If I didn't," he whispered, "and you didn't. Then Vanessa's been forging your name." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It pressed in from every side. You know that feeling? When your brain finally connects dots your heart's been avoiding? I could see it happening to him. "She's been stealing from us," he said. Still stunned. From our company. From you, I corrected. From your name. Your reputation. He stood again. Started pacing. I don't get it. Why? We're not even public. We're not that big. Maybe that's why, I said quietly. We're small enough to miss things. Big enough to matter. He stopped near the window. Looked out into the dark. I thought I knew her. I stayed still. Gave him space to feel it. She's lied to me every day, hasn't she? His voice cracked. Every morning kiss, every, I love you. All of it. I walked over and rested my hand on his shoulder. Sometimes, I said, we fall in love with who someone lets us see. Not who they really are. He didn't answer. Not at first. Then, after a long pause, he turned to face me. I need more than this, he said. Before I confront her. Before I call lawyers. I need something that leaves no room for doubt. I understood. As much as it hurt to see him still trying to make sense of it, I understood. When someone's taken over your reality for that long, you don't just wake up and walk away. You need something hard. Something undeniable. What kind of proof? I asked. The kind that shows me exactly who she is, he said. His tone had changed. No more disbelief. Now there was something colder. Focused. I nodded. All right. Then we dig. He looked surprised. You'll help me? I almost laughed. Jason, she came after both of us. You think I'm just going to sit here and drink tea? That made him smile. A small one. But real. He sat again. This time calmer. More collected. We laid out a plan. Re-access company logs. Cross-check vendor accounts. Look for any sign she'd been preparing for this. I'd already seen inconsistencies in how the transfers were labeled. That kind of sloppiness meant there was more. People like Vanessa don't stop at a few transactions. I'll go in early tomorrow, he said. Before she gets there. Use her office. Her computer. I nodded. And I'll be right behind you. You still have access? She probably forgot I had a master key. He exhaled. Sat back. I still can't believe it, he said. She always seemed so controlled. He looked at me. No. Sincere. I said nothing. You ever watch someone realize the person they loved never actually existed? It's one of the hardest things a parent can witness. But some truths break you so they can remake you. Jason wasn't broken yet. But he was close. And the closer he got to the truth, the more I feared what else we might find. Because Vanessa hadn't just lied. She'd built a world of lies. And we were only standing at the edge. Jason came over the next morning just after 6. He looked like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled, the one with the pale gray stripes he usually saved for board meetings. He hadn't buttoned the top 3. His eyes were red. His hair stuck up at the back, like he'd given up halfway through fixing it. I had already made coffee. The French press sat on the kitchen counter, steam curling upward. I didn't ask if he wanted any. I just poured 2 cups. He sat across from me at the dining table, that same old table where he used to eat peanut butter toast before school. Now we were here, adults, facing a betrayal neither of us wanted to name just yet. You were right, he said. His voice was soft, like the words cost something to say. I didn't answer right away. Just slid his coffee across the table. He didn't add sugar. He never does. He took a sip, then set the cup down and pulled a folder from his bag. The same financial printouts I'd shown him the night before. But now they had highlighter marks. Sticky notes. His handwriting in the margins. Dates. Vendor names. Checkpoints. I checked the master calendar, he said. Cross-referenced every timestamp. Those transactions happened during my meetings. Or when I was logged into our payroll system. Not financial. Not my laptop. I nodded. She knew your schedule, I said. Too well. He tapped the corner of a page. And here. She moved money into a shell company. I traced the LLC. It's registered under a name that popped up in her phone last year. I thought it was just someone from her business class. It wasn't, I said. He looked at me, eyes tired but sharp now. No. It wasn't. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. The disbelief was gone. The excuses, the hesitation, all burned away. Jason had entered a different phase. One I recognized. Grief, when it's turned into resolve. He pushed the folder toward me. I saw receipts. Wire instructions. Bank statements that didn't belong to us. At the top was a document with his own forged signature and a stamp I'd never seen before. This is enough, he said. Enough to confront her. Enough to break everything wide open. You're not doing this alone, I told him. He didn't argue. I'm going in before hours. She always gets in at 9:15. I'll be there at 8. Use her machine. Copy everything I can. Her desktop. Her downloads. Email backups. You think she hasn't covered her tracks? I think she's smart, he said. But not careful. Not always. I nodded. You'll need admin-level access. I have it, he said. She insisted I keep it when she became CEO. Said it made us more efficient. That made me smile, bitterly. Vanessa, always finding ways to dress control up as logic. Jason stood, pacing now, just like his father used to when something heavy pressed on his chest. I don't get it. Why steal from us? From me? I looked at him. Really looked. My son. A man. A husband. A person who had built something honest. And now stood staring at its collapse. Because you trusted her, I said. And people like Vanessa? That's the first thing they look for. He stopped moving. His mouth opened. Then closed. You saw it, he said quietly. Didn't you? I felt it. Why didn't you say anything? I did. In small ways. But I knew you were in love. And I knew anything I said would sound like jealousy. He sank back into the chair. Pressed his palms against his eyes. I should have listened. No. You should have lived through it. Sometimes the only way out is through. He didn't speak after that for a while. We just sat there. Drinking cooling coffee in the quiet of a too early morning. I watched the sun move across the floor tiles. I thought about all the mornings I'd seen Jason sit here. Coloring dinosaurs. Reading cereal boxes. Practicing his multiplication tables with peanut butter on his chin. Now he was planning a digital investigation into the woman he married. How fast life turns. I need to see it for myself, he said finally. All of it. Her files. Her emails. The stuff she's hiding. You think she's got it all in her work computer? If she was sloppy enough to use my login, she might be careless with her storage too. And if she's not? Then we dig deeper. The finality in his voice didn't scare me. It made me proud. For the first time in months, I saw the fire come back. Do you want me to come with you? I asked. He hesitated. Then nodded. If she sees you, she'll panic. Good. He cracked a smile. Just barely. You still have your keycard? I never turned it in. Of course I hadn't. That card was more than plastic. It was a piece of my name, my work, my history. She thought she could erase me with a sentence and a smile. But people like her always forget one thing. We remember everything. And now, so would Jason. The next part wouldn't be easy. But this time, we wouldn't face it separately. This time, she'd see exactly who she'd underestimated. And we'd make sure she never forgot it. The air was sharp the next morning. Not cold. Just crisp enough to sting when I stepped outside. I wore my navy coat. The one with the deep inside pocket where I used to keep peppermints for Jason when he was little. He'd forgotten his lunch at least once a week. I always had something tucked away. Just in case. Today, that same pocket held a USB drive and a printed copy of Vanessa's fake ledger headers. We weren't going to wing it. Jason texted at 6:52. Leaving now. Be there in 20. I was already in the car. The passenger seat held a folder with timestamps. Her transaction trail. Marked with red tabs. Jason had highlighted the login overlaps with a green Sharpie. His handwriting had changed over the years. Sharper now. More angular. It used to curve. Used to carry softness. Funny how betrayal alters even the way we write our names. I parked a block away from the office. Didn't want her to see my car in the lot. Not yet. Jason had a key fob. I still had a master key. She probably assumed it was deactivated. That was her first mistake. The building was quiet when we entered. Just the hum of security lights and the faint scent of cleaning solution from the overnight crew. The framed mission statement on the wall hadn't changed since we launched the rebrand last year. Design with integrity. I almost laughed. We didn't speak much. Just moved. Efficient. Jason went straight to her office. I unlocked it before he could ask. He paused. You really kept it this whole time? I looked at him. You really thought I wouldn't? He didn't answer. Just stepped inside. Her office was exactly what I expected. Minimalist. Ice-colored palette. A single abstract canvas on the wall. No personal photos. Not even one of them together. That told me more than she ever did with words. Jason powered on her desktop. While it loaded, I began pulling open drawers. Most were tidy. Labeled. Lined in faux leather. But the bottom left drawer clicked differently. Slight resistance. Inside, beneath a thin portfolio of project invoices, I found a manila folder labeled Insurance, Personal. Tucked inside were printed emails. Dozens of them. Between her and someone named Daniel W. There were mentions of wire transfers, calendar notes, even jokes about Jason's predictable lunch routine. My stomach turned. I handed it to him without a word. He didn't look surprised. Just tired. She's been planning this for a long time, he said. He tapped into her email next. Searched using phrases like cover liability, asset shift, and internal risk. Results popped up. More than we expected. One message from just last week read, he's starting to notice. We need to move faster. I'll make sure she's gone before month end. She meant me. Jason sat back in the chair, expression unreadable. His fingers curled tightly around the armrest. She was never just trying to build something, he said. She was dismantling us. Quietly. From the inside. I watched him for a long moment. Not just as a son. As a man who had just lost his wife. His trust. His sense of judgment. I used to think loyalty meant silence, I told him. That loving someone meant protecting them, no matter what. He looked at me. Waiting. But now I know, protecting someone includes telling them when they're walking off a cliff. Even when they don't want to hear it. He nodded slowly. Turned back to the screen. She used my credentials. Most of these transfers were done while I was in meetings. The system shows my login. But I wasn't even at my desk. You have calendar proof? Down to the minute. He copied the folders onto the USB drive. Triple-checked the backups. At one point, he stopped and looked at me. She left nothing to chance. Except us. I knew what he meant. She thought we'd stay passive. That I'd leave quietly. That Jason wouldn't question her. That he'd keep believing. But people don't stay blind forever. Not when the damage becomes this clear. We take this to the board, I said. Then to legal. Then to the police. Jason nodded. But we give her a chance to explain herself first. I frowned. You really think she'll confess? No, he said. But I want to watch her try. He sounded calm. Too calm. I reached over and touched his arm. You okay? No, he said. But I will be. You ever look at your child and realize they've grown up in a single night? That was this moment. He unplugged the USB. Tucked it into his inner coat pocket. We locked the office behind us. The hallway remained silent. Still dim. Like the building knew what was coming. As we reached the elevator, Jason stopped. Turned to me. You don't have to be there when I confront her. I know. But I want you there. That's all he had to say. Because I wasn't going anywhere. Not this time. We stepped into the elevator together. As the doors closed, I caught our reflections in the glass. Side by side. Older. Changed. But aligned. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. Whatever we found next, we'd face it together. And Vanessa? She wouldn't see it coming. Vanessa's office was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that buzzes beneath your skin. Where every drawer you open, every breath you take, feels like it echoes too loudly. I stood by the window while Jason sat at her desk, his fingers moving over the keyboard with precision. The city was still half asleep outside. A few cars rolled through the intersection. The sun was just starting to rise behind the old brick buildings across the street. Her office looked like a showroom. Pale gray walls. Cream curtains. A single white orchid in a clay pot on the shelf. No framed photos. Not one. Just a gold clock ticking softly and a minimalist print that read, "Discipline builds legacy." Funny. She didn't leave much of either behind. I started opening drawers while Jason worked. Top right was organized. Sticky notes, pens and color-coded holders, a phone charger coiled perfectly. Next was receipts. Mostly office supplies. A few spa invoices tucked in between. Then I reached the bottom left. It stuck a little, like it didn't want to be found. Inside, hidden beneath a packet labeled Q3 Vendor Breakdown, was a manila folder marked Insurance, Personal. I opened it without thinking. And my breath caught. Printed emails. Dozens of them. Messages between Vanessa and someone signed only as DW. Each one worse than the last. Notes about wire transfers. Jokes about Jason's predictable routines. Discussions of which vendors wouldn't ask questions. Even one that said, "She's getting suspicious. I'll take care of it this week." She meant me. I didn't speak. Just handed the folder to Jason. He didn't flinch. He took it, scanned the first few pages, jaw tight. No reaction on his face. But I knew him. Knew when he was holding it in. DW, he muttered. Daniel Webb. She used to get texts from that name during dinner. Said he was a freelance editor. He shook his head. I didn't ask questions. I watched him click through more folders on her desktop. She hadn't even password protected them. As if she never imagined anyone would dare look. She was careful, he said. But not paranoid. That's where she slipped. One folder was labeled Strategy_Archive. Buried in it were internal memos. Memos she never shared with the board. Plans to downsize our mid-level teams. To move our manufacturing partnerships offshore. To liquidate assets. None of this had been discussed. Jason clicked on a spreadsheet. This one's titled Exit Timeline. He exhaled. She had it broken down into phases. Exit? I asked. She wasn't just stealing. She was planning to walk away. With everything. I leaned against the wall, heart pounding. You ever read something and feel your sense of reality bend? Like the floor beneath you has shifted and no one told you? That's what this felt like. Jason kept digging. His voice low now. Controlled. She used my login to access accounting. Created duplicate reports. Edited audit trails. Look here, she even marked some of the files with fake initials. He turned the screen toward me. And this one, he said, was scheduled to send to our outside counsel next week. It's a draft of a complaint. Against me. I read the subject line. Unsafe workplace conditions, personal statement. She was setting me up, Jason said. Planning to claim I isolated her. That I made all her decisions. That she was never given authority. I sat down. Not because I was tired. But because everything I'd feared, everything I'd felt in my bones for 3 years, was laid out in front of me. In black and white. She wasn't lost. She was calculated. And she was almost done. Jason pulled up the final folder. It was dated the previous afternoon. Timeline adjusted, EB removed. EB. Evelyn Brooks. Me. I stood again. Walked over to the window. The orchid beside me had started to wilt. One petal curled inward like it couldn't bear to hold on any longer. Did she ever love you? I asked quietly. Jason didn't answer right away. Then, softly, he said, I think she loved the idea of what I could give her. He stood. Closed the folders. Pulled out the USB and placed it in his coat. We have everything, he said. And just then, we heard it. Footsteps. Heels. Deliberate. Unhurried. Familiar. Vanessa. Jason looked at me. No panic. No hesitation. He walked over and reached for the folder with the printed emails. The one that spelled out every lie. Every betrayal. I placed my hand over his. Let her speak first. He nodded once. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. And I knew. This wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was reckoning. And the silence just before it? That was the loudest sound in the room. Jason moved quickly, almost methodically, as if each click of the mouse helped him breathe a little easier. The way he leaned forward, fingers darting across Vanessa's keyboard, reminded me of how he used to build Lego cities in our living room. Focused. Determined. Trying to make sense of a world he could control. But this wasn't that. This was something far more fragile. And far more dangerous. She used my login to process every major transfer, he said, voice tight. Look. All of them. He turned the screen toward me. Each line was stamped with a time. A date. A username. His. I was never at my desk during these times. Here, I was in a warehouse walkthrough. This one, I was on a call with Japan. And this? I was home with the flu. He clicked faster now. Pulled up internal chat logs. Office security logs. Everything matched his story. He hadn't been near a computer. Not his. Not hers. She must have memorized my password, he said. She always stood behind me when I typed. I stayed silent. Not because I didn't have something to say. Because I was trying not to cry. She wanted it to look sloppy, I said finally. She wanted people to believe you left yourself logged in. That you were careless. That it was your fault. He nodded. She even chose times when I was here. Physically in the building. Just not at my station. That way, it wouldn't raise alarms. I looked at the timestamps again. There was a cruel precision to it. Vanessa hadn't just stolen. She'd studied him. Knew when he'd be in meetings. When he stepped out for coffee. When he took his lunch break. You ever realize someone's been watching you, not to understand you, but to dismantle you? That's a grief few people prepare you for. Jason opened another file. This one labeled intake_notes_personal. It was a log. A diary almost. Each entry marked with dates and short summaries. Jason raised voice during meeting. Jason asked why I worked late, framed as controlling. Jason suggested fewer travel days, document as isolation. Prep narrative, emotional manipulation. It went on like that. She was building a case, he whispered. A fake one. Every normal interaction, every frustration, every suggestion, every logistical conversation between two spouses, twisted into something sinister. Cold. Weaponized. Jason sat back, rubbing his eyes. His shoulders dropped. Like the weight had finally settled. She said I was too trusting, he murmured. When we argued. When I didn't question her invoices. She used to say it with a smile. I thought she meant it affectionately. She meant it literally. We found a folder of scanned documents next. Photos of receipts. Screenshots of fake text messages. Even notes where she'd written what she would say, word for word, if asked about her finances. She's been playing both sides, I said. She made the entire company believe I was micromanaging her. While she quietly funneled money into side accounts and prepared her exit. Into Daniel's name. He didn't even flinch at the name this time. She wanted you gone, he added. Because she thought you were getting too close. That email we found, the one that said, EB removed, that wasn't just coincidence. I was her threat. Jason closed the laptop and pushed it gently to the side. The silence stretched between us. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Honest. I think we both understood, in that moment, the scale of what had been done. Not just the fraud. Not just the lies. But the emotional betrayal. The slow, intentional effort to isolate him. To make him doubt his instincts. His memory. His mother. She didn't just take the money, he said. She took who I thought I was. That's when I moved. I walked around the desk and stood behind him. I placed my hands on his shoulders, just like I did when he was a child, sitting in front of a bad grade or a broken toy. You didn't lose yourself, I said. She just worked very hard to make you feel like you had. He didn't cry. But he nodded. And that was enough. At exactly 8:14, we heard the front door open. The faint sound of heels. Click. 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 Jason stood, tucked the USB into his inner pocket. She's early, he said. I glanced toward the door. My heart was steady. Let her come. Let her speak. Because this time, we weren't going to ask questions. We were going to give her answers. And none of them would be what she wanted. Vanessa's footsteps echoed in the hallway. Each tap of her heel sounded intentionally controlled. Calculated. As if she expected to walk into an empty stage. Instead, she stepped into a reckoning. I heard the click of her office door. Then silence. Not respectful. Frozen. She stood in the entrance. Navy pencil skirt. Crisp white blouse. Hair swept into a tight chignon. No smile. Only a practiced expression she used to mirror success. Her eyes scanned the room. Then settled on me and Jason. She said nothing. Just tilted her head, as if tasting the air. Jason held the folder. Emails exposed. Evidence. Truth prepared. I stayed back. Hands at my sides. Steady breath. Jason, I said. Voice soft, clear. She's here. She didn't blink. A minute passed. Long enough for every drawer we opened, every file uncovered, to condense into tension. Finally, she spoke. Her voice calm. Frosted. Why are you in my office? We waited. I need to hear you explain, Jason said. Even tone. Fists unclenched. He didn't look weak. He looked resolved. Her mouth curved into a smirk. Years of control condensed in that expression. I'd love to, she began. But I don't know what you're talking about. Still calm. Still practiced. A mannequin pretending unsettlement. Her eyes flicked to the folder. Then to me. Then at Jason. She finally moved. Sat at her desk. Right in the middle of the wreckage she created. Her control device. Command center. Sanctuary. I watched her eyes narrow as Jason slid the printed emails across the sleek surface. They thudded one by one. Snapped shut like final chapters. She picked up the top sheet. I saw the name, Daniel Webb. The joke about my memory. The note. She's getting suspicious. Her hands fluttered. Gloves falling. A narrative unraveling. She looked up. Eyes searching Jason's. Then mine. I don't understand. Jason opened his mouth. She interrupted. You're bluffing, right? Fabricated evidence. Signs of a setup. She didn't raise her voice. Her posture never broke. I thought about fear. I thought about cameras in small rooms. I can assure you, Jason replied. Nothing here is fabricated. He brought up her email account on screen. Indexed every message we found. The timestamps. The financial logs. The forged signature. She turned pale. Just a shade. Enough for light to catch. I saw panic flicker. But she regrouped. Smiled sweetly. You misinterpreted things, she said. Everything had context. She began to speak. Polished words. Calm allegations of misunderstanding. Claiming Jason's paranoia. Claiming empathy for his confusion. Claiming betrayal from his own mother. Not once did she say sorry. I fear you misunderstood too much, she said. She stood. He didn't move. Time slowed. She always had a plan, I said softly. To make you look like the villain. She looked at me. Furious. Surprised. Unprepared. I didn't ask for your approval, she spat. She stormed past us. Her heel struck the parquet. Then silence. Not calm. Heavy. I touched Jason's arm. It's done. He nodded slowly. Eyes still fixed on the door. We turned back to the desk. The files. The computer. The evidence. Vanessa's departure drew a line in the sand. That moment was not only the peak. It was the turning point. And now, the fight had just begun. I watched her shoes as she stood behind her desk. Perfect black leather. Not a scuff. Not even hesitation in her posture. Just a poised woman in control. Perfect went away fast. Jason unfolded one of the printed spreadsheets. Each line flagged in orange. She picked it up, frowning. Her hands were steady. I'll give her that. My email? She asked. That clipped tone of someone who's keeping score. My office? You broke in. She stammered over the word broke. Like she'd forgotten what she'd done. Yes, Jason said. His hands clamped around the documents. I broke in to ask you to explain the evidence. I don't know what you're talking about, she said archly, then tilted her lips into what she imagined was an innocent smile. Hands slid across the desk. Financial logs. The NDA mandate. The forged signature. The email about DW and removing EB. She flipped through them as if we'd given her a fan of coupons. Her face stayed neutral. One line caught her eye. She stopped. Finger hovered over the paper. I didn't flinch. Her silence filled the room like spilled ink. Jason leaned forward. Low voice. Steady. That message, time to remove Evelyn today, signed by you. She drew in a breath. A real one. Like air trapped by pretense had escaped. That was taken out of context. She didn't look down. She didn't look away. You called the board, Jason said slowly. Said I quit. Spun it as my fault. Accused her of embezzlement instead of owning your crimes. In the wrong hands those words meant nothing. In ours they meant everything. She finally lingered on me. Evelyn Brooks. Standing tall. Older. Nothing to hide. Your accusations get louder, she said. The louder the truth, the less it feels like truth, don't you think? We both heard it. Doubt. That was her tactic. Keep us second-guessing. Jason answered. No. The quiet truth is what scares people like you. A beat passed. I held my breath while she steadied herself. The world around us shrank until raw honesty was all that filled the space. Everything changed when you showed up in the office this morning, she said. Voice quiet, but forceful. Calling me a liar. You edited docs. You questioned me in front of clients. You turned it into a staged act. But you started the act, Jason replied. You've been acting for years. Another pause. This one sharp. Like the board just stood in the room with us. She flicked her gaze at the emailed screenshots. The wired transfers. The draft complaint she'd ready. The broadly scathing mock divorce notice, waiting. I stepped forward then. Crossed the few feet across her desk. Not to confront her directly. To listen. Why? I asked. My voice steady, controlled. Why do all this? She didn't blink. Just met the question. Her face altered. Tired. I thought I had to do it to keep us alive. That was not the answer I expected. But the truth doesn't always come with a warning. Jason tightened his hands on the files. Opened his mouth. Nothing came. I spoke softly. That's cruel. But at least it's honest. Vanessa inhaled deeply. Her hair fell. One strand across her forehead. She brushed it aside. If I don't say it, the board fires me. If I don't own everything before they come for me, I'd lose more. My choices became impossible after they insisted Evelyn step down. Warmth flickered behind her eyes. Not tears. Remorse. I waited. Jason waited. It's not an excuse, she whispered. Just context. Then it's time for consequences. I meant accountability. For what she stole. For what she tried to destroy. For the shadow she cast on people who trusted her. Jason folded the printed papers. Quiet. Final. She let her head drop. Not to the table. Not to the shame. Just away from it all. And in that moment, I realized something. Being right doesn't bring peace. But it brings clarity. We had the truth. We had each other. And someone who thought she'd scripted the end had just delivered the climax. Everything from here on out would unfold under new terms. The reckoning had begun. 2 weeks later, I sat by the window in my kitchen, watching the rain glide down the glass. Soft. Steady. Almost like it was rinsing something away. The house felt different. Not quieter. Just clearer. Jason had moved into a hotel downtown. He needed space. Time. Somewhere neutral. He said he couldn't sleep in their bed anymore. Couldn't walk past the bookshelf she designed. I understood. Some bruises don't fade evenly. Some take longer where the bone is close to the surface. The board called me yesterday. They asked if I would consider returning. Not to the same position. But as a consultant. Internal affairs. Cleanup. I didn't answer right away. There was a time I would have said yes before the sentence was even finished. A time I believed saying yes to everything proved my worth. That showing up, no matter how wounded, meant I was strong. But now? Now I believe strength isn't always about stepping forward. Sometimes it's choosing when not to. Jason stopped by the other night. He brought takeout. Thai food from a little place we used to love when he was still in grad school. Pad cew and fried tofu. We didn't talk about Vanessa much. Just enough. She hasn't apologized, he said. I nodded. Not surprised. Do you need her to? I asked. He took a bite. Chewed slowly. No, he said. Not anymore. It wasn't forgiveness. Not even closure. Just a simple decision to stop waiting. That's the thing about betrayal. It teaches you that not everyone who hurts you will hand you the tools to heal. Sometimes, you have to carve your way out. I took out the envelope later that night. The one I'd kept in the back of my closet. It held a printout of the NDA she made the staff sign. The one that tried to erase me in legal terms. I looked at it for a long time. Then I fed it into the shredder. Page by page. Her silence no longer meant anything. Mine did. You know, I used to think silence meant weakness. That not defending yourself loud enough, fast enough, was the same as admitting guilt. But now I know. Silence can also mean knowing. Seeing. Waiting. Building your own narrative when the world tries to write you out of your own life. A week after the confrontation, Lily called. She cried when I picked up. Said she felt guilty. Said she should have done more. I told her what I now believe. Sometimes, surviving is the loudest form of resistance. And sometimes, watching the truth unfold is the only justice you get. She thanked me. Then told me something I didn't expect. I've applied for your old position, she said. I smiled. Big, genuine. Good, I told her. Don't let anyone make you small. When the call ended, I stood by the kitchen sink. Light was breaking through the rain. I could see my reflection in the window. Tired eyes. But steady hands. I haven't decided if I'll take the consulting offer. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I know one thing now. With absolute clarity. I am not a footnote. I am not the woman they quietly replaced. I am the story they couldn't bury. And maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's just the beginning.